Deadlines are apparently optional in the Sunshine State. The latest on Jaden Rashada's missed enrollment and Cormani McClain's now past announcement. Plus, Harbaugh is sticking around and Harbor is looking around. We are headed to Knoxville, South Bend, and Hawaii as the college football recruiting show starts right now. Welcome in. As you can see, we have a special guest joining the program today. It's our 24/7 Sports Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins. I'm Emily Proud, and be sure to submit your questions in the chat, and we'll take them at the end. But Andrew, we start, as we always do on this show, with some headlines, and it does not get spicier than what's happening down in the swamp, or I guess not happening. The Jaden Rashada saga continues. To get you caught up, the five-star quarterback signed with the Gators, but he missed Friday's deadline to enroll for the spring semester, so he'll need an exemption to participate in spring practice. All of this reportedly stemming from an issue with an NIL deal. So, Andrew, it's safe to say his future in Gainesville is in doubt, but how much worry should there be from the Florida faithful?
I think there should be plenty of panic if you're a Gators fan. Rashada was part of a rebuilding quarterback room, and with him on the way out, I think DJ Lagway, the arm they have committed in the 2024 cycle, our number 6 quarterback, he becomes super important for them. Billy Napier needs to get Lagway to Gainesville as soon as possible.
All right, and while we're all focused on whether or not Georgia can pull off a three-peat next year, Kirby Smart is eyeing, let me do the math quick, a 5-peat. The Dogs adding 2 big talents to their 2025 class. You got 4-star D lineman Justice Terry and the 5th-ranked offensive tackle in the class, Micah DeBose. Now, it's early, but what are your initial impressions of these 2 additions?
The rich get richer. These are 2 NFL frames. I mean, Georgia signed the number 2 ranked recruiting class in 2023. Now they have the number 1 ranked class in 2024 and the number 1 ranked class in 2025. Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs getting it done. Terry, 37-inch arms. Those are some of the biggest ones we have found in 2025.
Whew. The Dogs are not going anywhere. Meanwhile, speaking of, Jim Harbaugh says he's staying at Michigan, no, for real this time, unless, of course, he changes his mind again. Now, as it pertains to the recruiting world, the Wolverines are still in play for 5-star Nicholas Harbor and the number 2 quarterback in next year's class, Jaden Davis. How much will Harbaugh's latest declaration impact those recruitments?
I think Jaden Davis has been one of the most calculated players in the class of 2024. I think he hasn't made a decision yet because he wants to know what's going on with Harbaugh. So you think they can lock him up. And then with Nicholas Harbor, Jim Harbaugh, 23 NFL draft picks over the past 3 seasons. They're going to have probably 8 or 9 more this upcoming May. I think the message is clear from Harbaugh to Harbor. Come here, get developed, and go to the NFL.
Oh yeah, more on him in just a bit. And back to this cycle here, the highest ranked unsigned 2023 recruit. You can see it here. He just took a visit this weekend. Cormani McClain making the trip to Colorado to see Deion Sanders and the Buffs. The corner originally said that he would make his decision on January 15th. It's January 17th, and he has yet to do so. So we need to bring in the man who broke the news on our National Signing Day show back in December. It's our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. And Steve, the news in particular that you broke was that Deion was in touch with Cormani McClain after his mom announced that he would not be signing on December 21st. You've been on top of this from the get-go. So what are you hearing coming out of this latest visit to Boulder this weekend?
Well, I think that Colorado continues to impress Cormani McClain and his family. Obviously, getting him out to Boulder this weekend to see it in person for an official visit. But Colorado, they've been going hard for the top-ranked corner in the 24/7 Sports Composite for about a month now. And obviously with Deion Sanders and his pedigree at the position, arguably the best to ever play cornerback. And certainly what he did in rebuilding a Jackson State program and making them nationally relevant. They played nationally televised games, had average attendance of over 50,000 people. I think that that's an exciting thing when you look at a Colorado program that's starving for some success right now. But it's not just about Deion Sanders. I think cornerbacks coach Kevin Mathis has been someone that's made an impression on Cormani and his family. And I think that Coach Kelly, the new defensive coordinator, as well. So Colorado, they have a very experienced coaching staff there, and I think that's made it an enticing option for him. But I still think that you have Miami in the mix. I think that Cormani has interest in Alabama as well. So we'll see what happens leading up to National Signing Day and if the young man puts pen to paper then.
It's interesting you said that about the cornerbacks coach. I think we just assumed because Deion played the position in the NFL that that's why all of these guys are drawn to him. And speaking of, I'm starting to get whiffs of the Travis Hunter flip from last cycle. Andrew, I'll ask you this. How do you see similarities with what's happening currently with Cormani McClain?
Well, it's certainly surprising. I mean, heading into that early signing day, we didn't think Cormani was a possibility. He might end up anywhere else. But as we've pulled away from it, maybe we should have. I mean, Cormani's recruitment has been hard to peg from the jump. I was talking with Steve about this a few days ago. I mean, BYU at one point was in Cormani McClain's top 5. He has set up visits to a number of different schools, ended up not visiting or not catching the plane. I mean, he has been all over the place. And then when he initially announced to Miami back on CBS Sports HQ in late October, I mean, when I showed up, I thought it was Florida. All signs were pointing to the Gators. That's what everyone expected. And then he announces for Miami. We didn't even have the cameras rolling, how to get him to redo that whole commitment ceremony. So it is similar in some ways, but we kind of sniffed this one out on signing day and figured that Coach Prime was up to something. He had something up his sleeve. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if there's any other schools outside of those 3 that have been involved, but Cormani still has some visits left to use, and we still got a few days. I mean, he said he was going to announce on Sunday. It's Tuesday night. Still haven't heard any or gotten any white smoke from the Cormani McClain camp.
Yeah, Deion tried to warn us that he's got something up his sleeve, so we will have to wait and see. Meanwhile, another top undecided prospect in the 23 class is 5-star Nicholas Harbor. Notable teams in the mix. We've talked about them a lot. You got Michigan, South Carolina, Maryland, Oregon. Now, Steve, you reported today that Dan Lanning will be in home with him tonight. So what's the latest with Harbor's recruitment as we get closer and closer to February?
Yeah, Dan Lanning, receivers coach Junior Adams will be in town, and that'll be their first time meeting those guys in person. Then Oregon's scheduled for an official visit next weekend. And I think this is a program that has a lot of runway in the recruitment of Nicholas Harbor. But to date, we know that he's talking to Mike Locksley in Maryland almost every day, if not every day right now. He's made several trips to Maryland here down the stretch, and obviously very excited about the Terrapins program. Michigan and South Carolina got official visits during the fall. Right now, nothing scheduled for unofficial returns to either of those campuses, but Shane Beamer and Jim Harbaugh, according to Harbor's dad, are expected to make in-homes next week. Look, this is a young man that wants to run in the next Olympics. Then he wants to play professional football. Oregon has a track record with players that have been able to do that. And I think that Coach Lanning and Coach Adams are going to come in with a hard sell on that this tonight. And then they're going to get him on campus next weekend. Harbor has run in a track meet in Eugene 2 years ago, but this will be an opportunity for him to, get a feel for the facilities and meet the people. And the dad said they want to get a feel for the academic side of things. This is also a young man that has plans of being an orthopedic surgeon after his athletic careers are over. So this is a young man that's got a lot of things going for him right now, and Oregon thinks they have all the answers. We'll see what happens coming out of that official visit next weekend. But Mike Locksley in Maryland taking nothing for granted, hitting him up every single day right now as they try and lock him up on National Signing Day.
Steve, you mentioned Michigan with Nicholas Harbor. I'm sure all of Big Blue, that's the guy they're focused on here down the stretch. But they also had a big junior day over the weekend, a few defensive backs on campus, checking out Ann Arbor. Michigan sitting right now with the number 13 class in the 2024 cycle. What can you tell us about some of those visitors?
Yeah, 5-star cornerback Bryce West from Cleveland Glenville returned to Michigan. He's been to Ann Arbor several times, and he's had Michigan high on his list for over a year now. So Michigan, they've had success at Glenville. I know it's well documented that Ohio State typically lands the elite players out of Glenville, but a guy like Frank Clark goes up to Michigan and has a great career and doing well in the NFL. Bryce West, very high on Michigan, has a great rapport with Coach Klink. Loves the atmosphere and vibe on campus, and got a chance to go take in a basketball game and get around the coaches again. The other prospect on campus was top 247 defensive back Jacob Oden. His father is the head football coach at Harper Woods, one of the best football coaches in the Midwest. He's a Michigan alum, so Jacob's been visiting Michigan his entire life, but now he's going through his own process. Has close to 40 scholarship offers. It's obvious Michigan's near the top of his list as well, and he enjoyed having some chalk talk with Coach Klink on this most recent visit, just talking X's and O's and getting a feel for what it would be like to be under Coach Klink if he did ultimately choose to play at Michigan. But those are two guys that Michigan's in fantastic shape for. Early in the cycle, they got him back to campus this past Sunday for what was a pretty exclusive visit with just those two elite guys on campus.
All right, some other corner news. Four-star Aaron Hampton visited Alabama this weekend. You then immediately put in a crystal ball for the Tide to land him. Must have gone well. What led you to that pick?
Yeah, Alabama was the leader going into the visit, wanted to see how things went in Tuscaloosa. He loved it. Now, he's a terrific two-way player that Alabama's recruiting as a receiver. Nick Saban, in fact, told him that he would be an outstanding slot receiver in the offense. But talking to him after the visit, Alabama, no question, leads in this recruitment right now. But there was a time where Baylor led in this recruitment. There was a time where Texas led in this recruitment. But Alabama looks like they have some serious staying power here following a terrific visit over the weekend.
Steve, another crystal ball for you. You recently put in Matt Rule, you put in Demetrius Bell, the former Michigan State wide receiver commit. That's a guy that you have crystal balled to the Cornhuskers. They've done a great job since Rule has arrived on the trail. I call it Lincoln, Trait City. What do we need to know about Bell?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that think Bell's got a lot of pro potential. He's very high on Nebraska's board. Rule, Coach Satterfield, Coach Evan Cooper went in home with Demetrius on Monday, and he's going to return the favor and take an official visit this weekend. This will actually be his third time in Lincoln, so he's already very familiar with the Nebraska football program. He says he's also still considering Kentucky, and Alabama's in touch with him. But talking to Demetrius, talking to a source close to him, Nebraska looks like the team to beat. They have a top 25 recruiting class right now, and Rule and company looking to add to it down the stretch with one of their most coveted offensive targets still on the board.
All right, Steve, let's finish here. Florida State had a big visit weekend highlighted by fourth-ranked corner in the 24 class, Charles Lester. More on his game in just a bit, but from your perspective, the final five of FSU, Georgia, Bama, Florida, and Ohio State, where does he stand with the Seminoles after that visit?
Well, recruiting ebbs and flows, right? And it's going to be a war when you mention all the schools that are still in the picture. But I actually think Florida State has set the tone. I think that they're the one to beat right now for Charles Lester. He's been there numerous times, has great relationships with head coach Mike Norvell on down to Derek Uray off field and anywhere in between. And they just hired Coach Pat Surtain to coach the defensive backs. And that's one that I think can give them another boost as he starts to build a rapport with Charles Lester. But I think he feels very comfortable in Tallahassee. Loves the trajectory of the program. And this is a Florida State class that they have a top 25 recruiting class in 2023, number one in the transfer portal, number 4 early in 2024, sitting really strong with Charles Lester. Florida State's certainly one of the fun teams to watch right now.
My goodness, between recruiting and the transfer portal, Florida State, super fun to watch them right now. Steve, thank you so much. Be sure to check out new episodes of the Wiltfong Whip Around on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page every Monday and Friday. Now, Andrew, as evident by where you have him ranked in the class, I think, fourth ranked corner, and of course the programs that he's currently being offered by, it's clear, Lester, darn good football player. But when you watch him play, what stands out most about his game?
Well, his length, the only measurement we have for him is from 2 years ago, and he was 6'1". I think when you put on the tape, he might be 6'2", 6'3". He's really good in off-man coverage, and you're going to see some clips of him also playing a little bit of offense. So we like the ball skills, and really not a lot of people threw it his way as a junior. He helped lead his team Riverview to the playoffs and one of Florida's highest classifications. Did a little bit on offense. Like I said, with wide receiver, was also playing some wildcat quarterback. I think with Charles Lester, we're still waiting to learn more and more about the 2024 class, but he's a guy that could be a multi-year starter, could be an impact player right away on the outside, and eventually an NFL draft pick one day. And when we talk about Florida State, you mentioned it, Steve mentioned it, the transfer portal. Well, guess what? Anytime there's a big name in the transfer portal that's a cornerback, everyone wants them. So if you can get those guys, bring them in and develop them, it makes it much easier when it comes to assembling and building a roster in this new age college football.
Yeah, I'm sure Mike Norvell hopes that he is a long-term starter for him. We'll see what happens with his recruitment. And while we miss our friend Blair Angulo on the live show today, do not feel bad for him. He's on island time. Blair and the gang are currently in Hawaii for the Polynesian Bowl, set for this Friday. But it's not all palm trees and white sand beaches. He's still working hard and took some time earlier today to give us some Poly Bowl practice standouts.
24/7 Sports has boots on the ground in Honolulu, Hawaii. Brandon Huffman, national recruiting editor at 24/7 Sports. Greg Biggins, national recruiting analyst for 24/7 Sports. And I am Blair Angulo, bringing you coverage from the 2023 Polynesian Bowl. And Huff, let's begin with you. We just got done with the first day of practices. Who were some standouts on the offensive line?
Well, before, I just want to clarify, Blair, we do not have boots on the ground. We have flip-flops on the ground while we are here in Hawaii. We were in tennis shoes today, though, and we were at the first practice at Kamehameha. It's a big week for offensive linemen. Francis Mauigoa, the #1 offensive lineman in the country, who is a native of American Samoa, committed and signed with the University of Miami, actually didn't play in the Under Armour game with which he was selected, spent that time with his family, and now came out, and he was the alpha dog on day one, a guy that looked every bit the part of an elite top 5, top 10 player nationally, a top-tier offensive lineman. They didn't go in full pads with the lineman. They were doing one-on-ones, and he just was an alpha in every sense. He was the leader in the drills. He was the first in line. He was going through full speed at every drill and just looked like an absolute dude, like you expect a guy like him to look when he comes to an event. He's been invited for nearly 2 years. Now he's here, and he acted like he really wants to be here and not just look at it as a vacation to Hawaii, but an opportunity for him to kind of embolden where he's ranked. But it was a couple other guys, too, that impressed us that we did get to see 2 weeks ago in San Antonio, Blair. 2 guys that you've been high on. They've been your top 2 linemen in your region from beginning to end, pretty much. Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu both have a lot of positional versatility. Caleb Lomu can play right tackle. That's what he's playing opposite Francis. Spencer, we've seen him play a number of positions. But for me today, on Monday, on day one, I'm going with the offensive lineman with the big three of Mauigoa, Lomu, and Fano.
Yeah, Francis Mauigoa, certainly an alpha. And Greg, not the only 5-star making noise out here. You liked what you saw out of Nico Iamaleava.
I did. And first off, nice flex, Huff, with that background of, beautiful downtown. I got this wall behind me and a parking lot to my left. So obviously all those Hilton points are doing you right. I love Nico. I thought he was tremendous. I said it before, the ball just comes out of his hand a little bit differently, man. He's got some explosive juice in that arm. He's already been practicing with Tennessee. So expected him to kind of come in and be a little bit ahead of everybody else. And I thought he was. He overthrew a few deep balls. He probably used to throw to some Tennessee ball wide receivers out there. But, the short intermediate throws were on point, very accurate. Love the pocket mobility. Very coachable kid, right? Again, he came from Tennessee, but he's still taking instruction. He's still being a leader out there. And, for me, I've said it from day one. I think you agree, Huff. Probably has the highest ceiling of any quarterback in this loaded 2023 class.
Yeah, terrific arm talent, Greg. And we were able to see him making some throws. It was against air, right? Routes on air, not a lot of defense being played on day one, but you could certainly see the ball coming out of his hand. And one of the players making plays on the receiving end was Zachariah Branch. Huff. This kid, the #1 receiver in the country from Bishop Gorman, headed to USC. He won the fastest man competition, beating out Malachi Coleman, who's Nebraska bound. And Zachariah Branch shows that he's just electric and a big-time playmaker and has potential to impact USC right away.
And I think what I love about Zachariah, we talked about it with Nico and with Francis and with Spencer and Caleb, is that he's an elite player. And, he played in an All-Star game 2 weeks ago. In fact, I believe he was the MVP of that game that Greg covered at the Under Armour game. And he's out here competing. There has been not an event I had been to this year, whether it was the Future 50 during the summer, whether it was the Battle Tournament in Las Vegas, but every event that you go to that Zachariah Branch is at, he is one of the premier players to watch. He's a treat to watch. Even when he's doing something half speed, it's faster than 95% of the guys out there, and he's competing. He's being competitive, and you just watch the way he runs. You watch the way he takes as many reps as possible. And, even when he won the most impressive thing I saw today from him was after he beat Malachi Coleman in that fastest man. After about 3 steps, he did a backflip. Like, that's the kind of explosiveness, athleticism, freak of nature kind of ability that Zachariah Branch presents.
Yeah, and Greg, the other 5-star that we had eyes on was Mateo Uiagalelei. He obviously didn't get a chance to even announce his commitment on signing day to Oregon. already arrived in Eugene, but he was out here battling some illness, but he looked like he was back to his old ways as one of those premier edge rushers in the country.
Yeah, but before, let me just touch on Malachi Coleman, because I joke with Zach, if that race is 10 yards longer, I think Coleman's got him. And talk about freaks of nature, Malachi Coleman, he's 6'3" and 200 something and change. Dude, he was gaining on Zach Brand. So talk about a guy with a tremendous amount of upside for Nebraska. I love Mateo. Had a little bit of a stomach issue, a little internal issue. He wasn't able to make it to his signing day announcements in the hospital for 3 days, but I thought he was the best edge rusher today. Maybe the best overall D lineman. David Hicks is a monster as well, but it was great to see Mateo in action. St. John Bosco national championship, going to Oregon as an edge rusher, and I saw it all. Uses his hands well, quick first step, multiple ways to beat an offensive tackle. Very, very in terms of just his ability to get up the field. He's really coached up. Older brother, his uncle. Everybody has kind of been working with him basically since he was 5 or 6 years old. So advanced technique already. I think he makes an early impact at Oregon. I think he had a great day today.
Yeah, we're expecting a few other stars to arrive in Honolulu later in the week, including Deuce Robinson, the #1 tight end in the country, the 5-star from the state of Arizona here at the 2023 Polynesian Bowl.
Man, that group is having way too much fun out there. Let's come back to the mainland where all is good in Big Orange Country. The Vols were a top 10 team in college football in 2022 and are a top 10 team in the 23 recruiting rankings. But what about 24? Well, Ryan Callahan of Go Vols 24/7 joins us now to break down this weekend's Junior Day on Rocky Top. Ryan, we showed that graphic of how Tennessee's success on the field has directly translated to success in recruiting. So following the 11-win breakthrough this past season, how have you seen that pay dividends in this current cycle now as we start to focus on 24?
Well, you're definitely seeing what we saw in the fall, which was that Tennessee got a lot of good players on campus for some of those most memorable home games this season, the Florida game, the Alabama game. They just had their first Junior Day of the year on Saturday. A lot of those guys have started to come back. And if they haven't been back yet, they're planning to come back in the coming weeks. So I think we're seeing Tennessee build on that 11-win season. Most importantly, we're hearing those players talking about Tennessee being more of a factor now and having gotten their attention more because of that 11-win season. So they're definitely doing their best to build off that, and it seems like they're off to a good enough start in 2024 that having a top 10 class in 2023, not much of a stretch to envision them maybe improving on that top 10 ranking, but at least putting together another top 10 class in 2024 with the way they've started.
Ryan, a big question I've had and something that I've been wondering as these quarterback dominoes fall. Look, Tennessee, they go out and get an elite arm in Nico. We just heard from the guys at the Polynesian Bowl about him. What is the plan for them? Because sometimes it's hard to follow up, a 5-star quarterback with another elite quarterback. So where are their focus? I know Jake Berklinger has been tossed out there. Jaden Davis, who's also been linked to Michigan. Are they going to try to go for a late bloomer? Any insight in what they plan to do at quarterback?
Yeah, I think that still remains to be seen. You mentioned the name that I've heard the most, which is Jake Merklinger. They've gotten some traction with him out of Savannah, Georgia. Highly ranked 4-star prospect, so a guy that they're going to face a lot of competition for. And the challenge, obviously, is can you sell that position and the opportunity to compete for the starting job next year to someone knowing they're going to come in alongside Nico Iamaleava? And that might depend on what he does this season. Does he play some games? Does he get a chance to start at some point, even though Joe Milton is the favorite right now? All that could factor in. Even if they land someone by this summer, it's something that could threaten that possibility of getting someone good in the 2024 class. It's even more important now because Taven Jackson, a 4-star from the 2022 class, already is transferred out, headed to Indiana to join his brother who plays basketball there. So with him gone, after Joe Milton leaves, they're down to one scholarship quarterback. They've got to get somebody, and they just handed out a new offer just a few days ago in Texas, still searching for some early options and kind of expanding their board. So Jaden Davis, probably a long shot. Merklinger looks more realistic. Beyond that, we'll have to wait and see. I think they're still casting a wide net and being realistic about the situation, knowing that it's a challenge with someone who casts as large of a shadow as Nico Iamaleava will.
And we also know the Vols have had some success in the transfer market when it comes to a quarterback. They currently have the 12th ranked class in 24. Just 3 commitments, though. It's very early. They hope to add to that with some of the top talent that was in town this weekend, like, 5-star defensive lineman Williams Nwaneri, the number 3 player in the class and the highest rated player in attendance. What was his impression of the program?
He really loved the visit. Talking with him, he was kind of blown away and definitely made it sound like he's going to be back in Tennessee at some point, whether it's this spring for a practice or in the summer. Already talking about maybe taking an official visit to Tennessee. Obviously, still very early and things like that can change, but they made a great first impression on him, and that's a big deal. That's they landed someone out of the Kansas City area last year, not an area they recruit a whole lot, but Shondavian Bradley, a top 100 player nationally last year. So you've got a little bit of a connection there in the area too, to a guy like Williams and Nwaneri, and we'll see how much they can build on that. But based on that first visit, it sounds like Tennessee definitely has some staying power in that one, and is going to have a chance to be a factor in his recruitment going forward.
Ryan, another headliner, Mike Matthews out of the Atlanta area. This is one of the top two-way players in the class of 2024. Some schools like him on offense, other schools like him on defense. Early on in that recruitment, USC, Notre Dame, Georgia were the schools, but he was back in Knoxville. Where does Tennessee stand in this recruitment? What's the buzz coming out of the facilities there? And more importantly, do they like him on offense or defense?
Yeah, it sounds like they're recruiting him as a wide receiver right now, and that's an example of what they've really gotten done so far in this class. But whether it's Ryan Wingo, another 5-star who was in town, or some of the 4-stars they're in on, they're in on a bunch of good wide receivers so far in this 2024 class, and that's a position of need. They only signed one true receiver that's expected to be an immediate impact guy in Nathan Leacock in the 2023 class. So we're hearing a lot of those guys, including Mike Matthews, really talk about having a chance to follow in the footsteps of Jalen Hyatt, winning the Blitnikoff Award this season and putting up the kinds of numbers those wide receivers did this year. So I think Tennessee is at least in the running and a legitimate factor for Mike Matthews. I think it speaks volumes that he was back at Tennessee on Saturday, only his second time there, but chose to make that visit over going to Georgia's national championship celebration. That said something to me about his interest in the Vols. So I think Tennessee at least is in the thick of that one. Going to be a long recruitment for sure, but Tennessee has given itself a chance to be a real factor with him.
Another guy you mentioned, Ryan Wingo, the number 4 wide receiver in the class, also there. Vols leading in the crystal ball, and as you just laid out, it's pretty easy to see why a wide receiver might want to play for Josh Heupel. But what stood out to him about his visit to Knoxville this past weekend?
Well, the important thing about this was, I think this was just sort of building on what Tennessee had already done with him. Steve Wiltfong has done a great job reporting on his recruitment and mentioned that, he, in recent months, it sounds like Tennessee has kind of set the bar in his recruitment since he went to the Tennessee-Florida game back in September. So I think Tennessee has been kind of the early favorite, and this visit just was kind of a chance for him to have fun there, get to know the school more. He didn't really have any in-depth conversations about football, didn't really have any particular goal. It sounded like a guy who plans to be back there multiple times, just continuing to get familiar with the school that he really could see himself at. And that's a big deal for a kid from St. Louis who's got an 8-hour drive to make that trip and kind of came in and made a weekend trip of it and is already planning to come back in the spring sometime or at least the summer. So I think Tennessee really did a good job there and has continued to do a good job with Ryan Wingo. He looks like the most realistic of those 5-stars that they've hosted so far, but they're legitimately in it for a lot of those guys. Wingo just looks like the best possibility early, and they've done a good job with him, obviously, getting him on campus 3 times now since June.
Great name, too, right, Ryan? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Check out Ryan's coverage of Junior Day and all the off-season storylines at GoVols 24/7. Let's head north. Sticking with the theme of Junior Day festivities, this past weekend was a who's who of 2024 talent up in South Bend, Indiana. A lot of top prospects there in attendance playing for Marcus Freeman. Hope to play for him in the future, led by quarterback CJ Carr. More on him in a bit, but I have to say that the biggest name there was not necessarily a player. It was our friend Tom Loy of Irish Illustrated. So let's welcome him in. And Tom, before we look ahead, let's talk about the here and now. Remind the people of the 2023 class that Marcus Freeman has put together. It was once a top 3 group, of course, but it's looking like they'll finish around 8th in the rankings after losing a few commits, unfortunately, most notably Keon Keeley. So what is your overall impression of this year's group?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody wants to talk about the tough blow with losing Keon Keeley and Peyton Bowen, but let's take a look at what they landed. They landed some big time prospects. Charles Jagasaw is a guy that we at 24/7 Sports like a great deal. He's right on the cusp of a 5th star nationally. Jeremiah Love, I know Andrew Ivins got a chance to see him in Florida at the Under Armour game, and he looked to impress down there. And he's a guy that's going to play running back at Notre Dame, and I know Dylan McCullough, Tommy Reese, and those guys love that kid. Drake Bowen, I think he had a strong week in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl. He's a 4-star linebacker out of Indiana. A guy I'm really excited about is Kenny Minchie. I think he had a strong high school career. It was a really nice flip after losing, silent commit, whatever you want to call it, from Dante Moore. But being able to get Minchie, flip him from Pittsburgh, was a big win for Tommy Rees. And maybe my dark horse for this entire class is Jaden Greathouse, who had an exceptional high school career. He's a tremendous wide receiver that I think is going to have a really, really good college career. And I know Chancey Stuckey cannot wait to get his hands on him and see what he can do early at Notre Dame.
Tom, I know you put in a few crystal ball picks. We're going to get into those here in a few minutes. But junior day at Notre Dame, I looked at the weather there in South Bend. Former South Bend resident. I lived there for 2 winters. I think there was some snow, right? It was pretty cold. So what did they do up there? Because I don't think they were walking around outside.
Yeah, it was a cold day, but luckily a lot of the guys there were from the Midwest, so they were pretty used to it. And I do like the mentality. They're like, if I'm going to play in the NFL, I'm going to play in all these cold weather stadiums. I'm going to have to go to, Minnesota or Buffalo, or whatever the case may be. So they got the right mindset in terms of picking Notre Dame and not passing just because of the weather. But no, they actually went to the hockey game at night, so that was pretty cool. But a lot of it was just, the ins and outs of Notre Dame, what it can do for you on and off the field. The 4-for-40 pitch, that has not changed since I've been covering Notre Dame for the last 10 years, and it's not something that's going to change anytime soon under Marcus Freeman. So busy day. It was a pretty cool photo shoot. They broke out the gold bars again, and it was a pretty unique setup this time. I really liked what they did in that sense, but it was all about bringing these guys close together. They didn't have a ton of guys there, so it was really like 10 to 12 guys outside of the commit. So they really wanted to get these guys building a brotherhood, if you will. So it was pretty neat. I thought they did a really good job.
A lot of beautiful buildings on that campus, too, so they can hang out indoors if they need to. Let's talk about one of the headliners this weekend. Of course, CJ Carr, quarterback, has been committed to the Irish since June, so he's been locked in early in this recruitment. Tom, how does his presence, though, help Marcus Freeman's efforts to recruit the rest of this class?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if he could be at Notre Dame right now, he would be signed, sealed, and delivered. I mean, this kid loves Notre Dame. He loves Marcus Freeman, Tommy Rees. This kid bleeds blue and gold, which is kind of funny because we all know who his grandfather is, Lloyd Carr from Michigan. So pretty neat how it all played out. He's fired up to build this class. He's taking a lot of pride, not just in the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side as well. And he's just, he's the guy building this group, and he knows that the coaches can't do it a ton publicly. They can kind of throw their little subtweets here and there, but for the most part, he's the one kind of leading the charge publicly, and he's pushing hard for all these guys. And, it'd be nice if he could get a little help on the defensive side of the ball with another big name, maybe a 5-star kid we might talk about. That would be a massive pickup that would actually help him on the defense side of the ball.
Tom, the biggest crystal ball for you coming out of the weekend, Justin Scott, our number 8 ranked interior defensive lineman. You pop on the tape. I think this is a guy that Notre Dame hasn't had in a while. 2-way player in the middle, 3-4-eye technique. He can create some juice. I think you when we were texting, you said Christian Wilkins is the comp. I think maybe Jerry Tillery. I remember he played some offense coming out of high school. What's the latest on him, and why have you logged that forecast for the Irish?
Yeah, shout out to Irish Illustrated's Tim Priester for that comp. I mean, I think it's a great one. I actually see some Tillery as well. What I like most about Scott is his violence, his toughness in the middle. We haven't seen a guy like that since Lewis Nix, kind of manning that front 7. So you need somebody like that in the middle to clog the run, to be able to get to the quarterback. I asked somebody at Notre Dame, like, what do you see here in Justin Scott? If if you can land somebody like that, and the person said, of course, he's the next Bryant Young. So we'll see what happens there. They need to get that one done. I did crystal ball him. I do feel like Notre Dame is the leader. Like them, slightly ahead of Michigan right now. I know Georgia just entered the race, and hey, all bets are off at that point. But I know he's got a potential commitment lined up for July 31st, I believe. So we'll see if that comes to fruition and he makes his decision at that time. But either way, as of today, I do like Notre Dame's chances. I think Al Washington, Al Golden, they've done a tremendous job. I think distance is a factor, and I think that playing near his family, he's a Chicago kid. There's an opportunity, they're calling it like the hometown hero, essentially. And Notre Dame, CJ Carr, the rest of the commits, all over this guy. They have been relentless in recruiting Justin Scott. So he's feeling the love from Notre Dame. Now it's just up to him to pull the trigger.
All right, we're going to roll through a few more crystal balls, but real quick, Tom, how many did you put in this weekend?
I believe I hit eight for just yesterday. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you've been busy. Marcus Freeman's been busy. Let's roll through a few more of these here, though. Again, it's very early in the process, so the crystal ball you put in for 4-star receiver Bronte Johnson doesn't mean that he won't keep taking visits. I still think he's got plans for that. But after the weekend, what has you leaning Notre Dame for him?
Yeah, so Bronte is right in my backyard in Fort Wayne, and he's a kid I've been able to get to know pretty well, and tremendous athlete. I mean, this is a kid that was for sure a surefire bet to play wide receiver at the next level. But when I went and watched him play as a junior and watch him play safety, I saw a next level kid that really good receiver, but I think he has a chance to be an elite safety. And that's where I kind of see him fitting. If he picks Notre Dame, that's where I kind of see him fitting. But he's a tremendous wide receiver. I know Chancey Stuckey wouldn't mind having him in his room, so we'll see what happens there. But I just think that getting his mom on campus this weekend, I think, again, like Scott, distance from home is a factor. I'm not ready to count out a couple others. I know Indiana and Purdue are involved. He's going to get up to Tennessee at the end of the month for their junior day. I know you just had Ryan Callahan on, so keep an eye on the Volunteers. But right now, I definitely think Notre Dame has set the bar. And again, it's going to be up to Marcus Freeman and those guys to close the deal.
Tom, let's finish up with Peyton Pierce, a kid out of the Lone Star State. Notre Dame signed 4 from Texas last cycle. Coming into this visit, Pierce all Oklahoma on the crystal ball, but as he exits and heads back home, you logged 1 for Notre Dame. What are you hearing there? And more importantly, is this another Peyton Bowen type of situation? I never anticipated these Notre Dame-Oklahoma battles, but here we are.
Yeah, we got another Peyton from Texas, a big-time player that's looking at Notre Dame and Oklahoma. So we'll see what happens. But, no, I absolutely like Notre Dame right now for Peyton Pierce, 6'1", 225-pound plus linebacker that Al Golden, James Laurinaitis, Marcus Freeman badly want to land at Notre Dame. They are pushing really hard. I know Oklahoma's in it. He's going to visit there, I think, next weekend. And then he's got Texas A&M. He's already talking about returning to Notre Dame for a spring practice, potentially a spring game. Like I said, I know that there's a lot of smoke about the Sooners in Oklahoma. I believe both of his parents went there. I get it. No question, I get it. There's a lot driving him to the Sooners, but all you can do in this business is trust your sources, trust your conversations with the young man. Not to quote Steve Wiltfong there, but you got to just go with the flow and write out what your best sources are saying. And my best sources on this have Notre Dame as the favorite at this point, which is why I put the crystal ball pick in and why I feel good about Notre Dame's chances.
I think it's safe to say that the best sources are probably your best sources. So, Tom, thank you so much for all your great insight. Be sure to check out all of his work at irishillustrated.com. We have arrived to that portion of the show where it's time to answer your viewer questions. Andrew, just because you're guest hosting does not mean you get out of the tough questions. This is our favorite part, and I have been monitoring the chat, which has been insane today. We got tons of research in there from our 24/7 Sports Director of Research, Ryan McGrady. We are so thankful to have him there. I'm sure you guys are learning a lot of back and forth, too, between some fan bases, all in good fun, though. But I found this one from Nicholas Barone, who says, further down in the top 247 rankings, who of that group do you think could make an impact next year? Is there a guy that stands out to you?
One name immediately jumps out, Mark Fletcher, the running back that is headed to Miami. We saw him in the All-American Bowl last week, had an 80-yard touchdown catch. Yeah, we know he can catch it out of the backfield, but his ability to run in between the tackles, I think Miami needs that. They missed it this past season, and he's a guy that I think is going to be able to go day one. And when we look big picture at college football, running back seems to be the easiest position where you can get on the field and make an impact. Look at Quinshon Judkins up there at Ole Miss. So Mark Fletcher, I anticipate him having a big role. If you play college football fantasy, get him on your team.
College football fantasy? That I don't mean to sound like, I don't know. Is that a thing or no? It's not.
It is for some people, and then you got those dynasty leagues as well. And when it comes to the NFL.
Die Hard. Okay, so this is why you need to watch the show. You find these things out in late January, so you're going to jump on it early. Our next question here, let's do from John Owens asking, do you think that Nicholas Harbor projects better, I love this question, on the offensive or defensive side of the ball when he gets to the next level?
Emily, I love this question too because my buddy Cooper Patagna, first night of Under Armour All-America game practices, I texted him, hey, I no longer think Nicholas Harbor is strictly a defensive guy. I see it on offense. And that Harbor, he was there alongside all those all-stars there that had been assembled, and I saw him run a few different routes, and I was kind of amazed. You start talking with the different defensive backs that were in Orlando for the week, and the thing they bring up is Harbor. He's extremely difficult to cover when he plants his foot and just takes off, and that makes sense. I mean, this is a guy that has 10-2 speed, could run in the Olympics. You know, he is not the most natural of pass catchers, but he's got a huge catch radius, huge wingspan, made a nice grab in the actual Under Armour All-America game. I think he could have a Kyle Pitts type impact in a spread offense that wants to put him in the slot. It's going to take some time, so you're going to have to water that plant, but whoever nurtures it, I think he is every bit of a freak. And that's why he's number one on my freaks list.
Yeah, I was going to say that if you didn't. I mean, it's one, and then there's like a big gap probably between the next guys. I mean, watching him run track and obviously watching him play football on both sides of the ball. If I play offense, I want him to play offense, and if I play defense, I would like him to play defense. I do not want to face this guy. He is a freak of all freaks. Let's go to the next question here from our friend Ollie, saying, where do you think Jaden Rashada could land if he doesn't end up at Florida? We got a follow-up, too, from Andrew saying, where on earth is he going? What do you think?
That's a great question, and I'm surprised some schools kind of have not leaked out. Here's the reality. We know every school around the country is always looking to improve that quarterback room. It's so important. It's the most important position on the field. Everyone's going to look to upgrade if they can. Jaden Rashada, no smoke yet. I speculated on our college football recruiting podcast this morning. I wrote down 5 different schools that I thought might make some sense for him. Let's start at the top. Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham's there. Still some questions about the quarterback depth. I think that would make sense. It's a West Coast school. Next up, you got Nebraska. Although I like Jake Garcia, who just entered the transfer portal from Miami. I think he could end up there. But Nebraska with Matt Rule, Jeff Sims is coming in. I could see them wanting to upgrade that quarterback room, find an arm of the future. 3 more here. Colorado with Coach Prime. That fits that West Coast mold. We know his son is going to be there, and they just signed 2 high school arms. But Prime loves the spotlight. I think Jaden Rashada would make a ton of sense for those 2. That could maybe be the perfect marriage. And the 2 SEC schools, Auburn, we know Hugh Freeze. They're still trying to figure it out there. They got Robbie Ashford, a mobile quarterback. They got Holden Gerner, who's a redshirt freshman. I was really high on him last cycle, but I still think that they would like to get more of a long-term answer there. And then finally, Texas A&M. Let's not forget, Jaden Rashada took a visit to College Station back there early in the summer months before it became this Miami-Florida battle. So I think Texas A&M, new offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino, why not maybe just reach out and have a phone call? And I think all 5 of those schools, one other thing you got to consider is they've all been involved in that NIL landscape with the collectives.
Yeah, and it seems kind of chaotic right now, and we're trying to figure out the exact numbers of the NIL deal and what went wrong there and everything that's going on. And the question I continually see, and I'd be remiss if I didn't follow up with our director of scouting, is he worth it? What kind of player is this guy?
I don't know if he's worth $13.1 million.
Okay. Well, is he worth all the chaos and the question marks and everything that's happening with Florida fans right now? Or are they wondering that as well?
I don't think he's worth it at that price tag. And look, Kenny Pickett, who went in the first round of last year's NFL draft, has started some games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. His initial deal is about $14 million. Lamar Jackson, he's playing on a $9 million contract. Yeah. Jalen Hurts, who could win a Super Bowl, is about $7 million. So I think that price tag's a little bit wild. I also think with all of this NIL stuff, and I keep repeating this in any airwaves that I can, we really don't know what these contracts look like, how they're structured. Is this incentive based? It's not supposed to be, but hey, if you win a Heisman, yeah, we'll pay you $13 million because it's probably going to be worth it for the university. So I think of that price tag, no. I do think all these quarterbacks, I mean, that's just the reality right now. There is a market for them, but I think collectives and those head coaches and coaching staffs, everyone's got to get on the same page and agree on a certain number. And Florida, Billy Napier, I was there in the summer for their Friday Night Lights camp. I think they have their operation dialed in, locked in. Now, is that the same thing maybe with their collectives and the boosters? I don't know. I believe in Billy Napier, really like what he did in that 2023 class with Rashada. It would have been nice to add him, but maybe, it's a blessing in disguise that someone is not going to come there and kind of rock the boat with the locker room. So we'll see. I think quarterbacks definitely do deserve money. I just said it. It's the most important position on the field. Now, do they deserve $13 million? I think that's a little bit wild, and anyone in the scouting community would agree with me.
it's just because we don't have a lot of public information out there. But I will say these NFL contracts are sometimes structured similarly, where we just see the big price tag, but it's not all guaranteed. There's a lot of incentives and things that they've got to reach. So maybe we'll get some clarity on some of these NIL deals, but it'll be interesting to see where Rashada ends up. Speaking of where a five-star player ends up, this one comes from KB82. If Colorado lands Cormani, will they have the best DB duo in the nation with him and Travis Hunter?
Oh, our rankings would suggest so. They would have the number one ranked corner in the class of 2022, and you would pair him with the number one ranked corner in the class of 2023. These are two new age cornerbacks. They are long. They have ball skills. They're converted wide receivers. They can go get the football. They can run. When you look at the NFL, the top two rookie corners, I keep saying this, Ahmad Sauce Gardner, and then you got Tariq Woolen, who is with the Seahawks. Both those guys have similar body types to Travis Hunter and Cormani McClain. Now, if we're going to compare Cormani and Travis Hunter, I think Travis is every bit of an alpha. Cormani's much more quiet, much more reserved. I think it's going to take him a little bit more time. But as my buddy Cooper Patagna pointed out on our podcast this morning, Cormani going to Colorado and kind of being in the shadows of Travis Hunter might honestly be the best thing for him. I've wondered just kind of about between the ears how he's going to react that first time when he's out there on the field and gives up a big pass, because guess what? He's going to do it. The best of the best do it on Sundays. Jalen Ramsey gets beat all the time. Watch YouTube highlights of him getting blown in coverage. He's going to make mistakes, and I think with Cormani, it's all about finding confidence. That's why he's looking for the right home, and I think if he were to go to Colorado, it could set up perfectly. You put Travis Hunter on one side of the field, Cormani on the other. You can shade your safeties over there, and it would be a very dynamic duo. I would sign up if we still had pay-per-view to see those guys try to take on USC and try to cover what they have assembled with Lincoln Riley's offense in a Pac-12 game before they move off to the Big Ten.
Yeah, good luck completing passes in the Pac-12. You don't have to sign up for pay-per-view, but you do have to get some coffee because those games are on very, very late, but definitely worth it if those two end up in a backfield together. Speaking of, let's go to Rid Fly with our last question here. We have taken up so much of your time. We appreciate it. Finally, what impresses you most about 2024 four-star running back Jarrett Gibson?
Oh, man, he's an elite pass catcher, and I know we're going to talk about him as a running back. It's weird to say that, but I go back to this camp in Orlando back in the spring. You had Cedric Baxter there. You had Isaiah Augustat. Both those guys signed with Power 5 schools and are in our top 247. But Jarrett Gibson was dynamic out of the backfield, creating separation on different wheel routes. So you like all of that, and then you put on the tape of him as a junior at IMG Academy, and he's excellent. In the preseason game against Venice, I think he had 3 carries for 103 yards and 3 touchdowns at one point. He is a home run threat. He's got game-breaking speed. That has always been the case. And I'll say, as crazy as it is, I remember when Jarrett Gibson was playing linebacker at the FBU Freshman All-American Bowl, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, and I said, hey, this guy could probably be a P5 linebacker. Well, he's a running back. I think he's the real deal. Definitely running back one for us early on in the 2024 cycle. And he's a guy that I think has a good chance to end up at Tennessee, Texas, Georgia. He continues to mention all 3 of those schools. And I think Florida's in there as well. So keep an eye on Jarrett Gibson. He's going to have another big year behind an elite offensive line at IMG Academy.
So they ask about a running back, and first thing out of your mouth is he's a great pass catcher, and then you come back to say that he's also a really good linebacker. So that sounds like quite the impressive athlete. Again, 2024 class. We'll have to wait a little bit to see how he plays in college and where he plays in college. Hey, we always love when Andrew joins us here on the show, and if you want more of his insight, well, you are in luck. Both he and national recruiting analyst Cooper Patagna have launched a brand new 24/7 Sports football recruiting podcast, and episode 1 just went live this morning, and new episodes dropping every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Andrew, thank you so much for filling in today, and that's going to do it for us here. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. He's Andrew Ivins. I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.